So next up, podcast listeners, looters were illegals. So in Florida, we had Hurricane Ian, and we covered this briefly yesterday, but I have to follow up because we found out that some of the looters that were found in Florida, there were 4 looters that were engaged in post-Ian looting on a pretty wide scale, by the way. 3 of the 4 were here illegally, so not even American citizens. Imagine that. So just to get this straight, people come to the United States because they want rule of law. They want fairness. They want law and order. Then we have some of these individuals who come from those very places where there isn't rule of law and there isn't law and order. And they come to the United States and they're like, oh, let's just continue that. There's Ian. This is what we would do back in our home country. We would certainly go loot and take advantage of people's misfortune. So let's just do it here in Florida as well. So we just found out that the 4 people that were arrested were actually, 3 of the 4 were illegals. So DeSantis, this is in the New York Post, blasts the illegal alien looters after Hurricane Ian in Florida. Now, most of the heartless looters busted in hurricane-ravaged Florida were illegal immigrants. Governor DeSantis announced Tuesday as he said he'd like to drag them out by the collars and send them back to where they came from. You know what? It's perfectly okay to speak this way because these individuals don't belong here and they haven't earned the right to be here. They come here, and as I said, they actually engage in the same utter nonsense that has caused their countries to be an awful place to live. And they want to repeat that here today. And the Democrats, of course, are okay with this. The Democrats are okay with open borders and letting these people in. So now we have proof, okay? We have real-time proof that individuals who engage in this same kind of nonsense back in their home countries, which is why their home countries are awful, come here for a better life, better opportunity to rip people off. So DeSantis says, quote, we've had 4 looters that were arrested and they need to be brought to justice. The tough governor said during an update on the devastation from historic Hurricane Ian. But 3 of the 4 are illegal aliens, said DeSantis, one of the fed-up Republican governors who has been sending border crossers in Democrat sanctuary destinations. So they're basically referring to DeSantis sending people to other states. And so these are people that are foreigners. They're illegally in our country. And not only that, they tried to loot and ransack in the aftermath of a natural disaster. The incredulous sounding governor said. So folks, we're speaking about this today again, because first we found out that 3 of the 4 were illegal aliens. And won't it be interesting to see if the Biden administration deports them? Should they be deported? Yeah. Will the Biden administration deport them? Will anyone in the media follow up with Biden and with Mayorkas to find out if he's going to send them back home? These are not people we want here. We're bringing this up not just because of an absent media, but because when the media does show up, here's what they do. Here's MSNBC's Joy Reid. She's talking about DeSantis and DeSantis's comment about how individuals in Florida have a right to protect their property. And they have a right to use their Second Amendment privileges, which is really a right, let's face it, not a privilege, it's a right. The Second Amendment right to defend their property. And that's a great common sense thing to have, which is really one of the key purposes of the Second Amendment, is to protect life and property. Well, MSNBC's Joy Reid doesn't ask about the looters who are illegals. Oh, no. She attacks DeSantis. We have that clip, ladies and gentlemen, and here it is.
As Florida battles one of the most powerful hurricanes ever to hit the United States, Governor Ron DeSantis is, he's running for president. Not officially, not yet. But nothing like a disaster and national cameras to boost one's White House ambition. All he has to do now is open up his arms and receive federal money. Let's just be clear. That is the executive leadership. He's now got to go hand in hand to Joe Biden for aid.
That's right. Yeah, so that's Joy Reid, who was really upset because DeSantis was speaking about the illegals and the looting. And we have that clip. And here is what DeSantis said. Here it is.
Not so much. The other thing that we're concerned about, particularly in those areas that were really hard hit, is, we want to make sure we're maintaining law and order. Don't even think about looting. Don't even think about taking advantage of people in this vulnerable situation. And so local law enforcement is involved in monitoring that. I told Kevin if the state needs to help as well, because you can have people bringing boats into some of these islands and trying to ransack people's homes. I can tell you in the state of Florida, you never know what may be lurking behind somebody's home, and I would not want to chance that if I were you, given that we're a Second Amendment state.
Governor, you're coming down to St. Johns County.
So kind of common sense, right? This is how a governor should speak, because in times of disasters, right, most Americans are, let's face it, they're wonderful people and they help each other, as they should. And that is a good thing. But there are people who try to take advantage of others in natural disasters, like the individuals who looted in Florida. And their MO was all about trying to enrich themselves at the expense of everyone else. And 3 of them, as I said, were illegals. And rather than talking about this greater issue, the media just attacks and attacks. So you heard MSNBC's Joy Reid on DeSantis, and it's just incredible. It's obvious that the left is terrified of this governor in every way. And you know, the left is also losing at the polls over this whole crime issue. Yesterday, we played Senator John Kennedy's new ad, Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana, a new ad on crime. And I just want to play this first before we go back into the attacks on DeSantis, because it's just kind of funny. I want you to understand, podcast listeners, that one of the biggest things on people's minds is the economy and inflation. And those things are all interrelated: economy, inflation, cost of electricity, cost of gasoline. The next one, of course, is crime. People are really concerned about this. And yet MSNBC and CNN and the Democrat Party is utterly silent on this. And we're going to talk about that in a minute, because naturally they can't ask the good questions. Before we do that, here's Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana with his commercial on crime. We're going to play this for you again because it's just hysterical. Here it is.
Violent crime is surging in Louisiana. Woke leaders blame the police. I blame the criminals. A mom should not have to look over her shoulder when she's pumping gas. I voted against the early release of violent criminals, and I opposed defunding the police. Look, if you hate cops just because they're cops, the next time you get in trouble, call a crackhead. I'm John Kennedy, and I approve this message.
So that is a senator who understands where people are and what they're thinking, as we discussed yesterday on the podcast. But the media is doing everything it can to undermine DeSantis, who, by the way, is also up for re-election. So you heard MSNBC's Joy Reid. Now we have CNN's Nadia Romero. We have 2 clips from Nadia Romero, who's interviewing DeSantis post-hurricane. Now, keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, the 2 counties that were affected by the hurricane the most were Lee County and Collier County. These are 2 counties that are on the southwestern part of the Florida Peninsula on the Gulf. Those 2 counties were most affected. And so Nadia Romero approaches DeSantis, and he graciously, just right off the cuff, takes the interview because he's walking in, looking at the damage and so forth. And does she ask about anything or try to really talk about things to make things better? Oh, no. It's all about the gotcha, about the response to the hurricane, among other things. Listen to this really carefully because we have 2 clips. The first one's about a minute long. And here's the clip. Listen.
Why do you stand behind Lee County's decision to not have that mandatory evacuation until the day before the storm?
Well, where was your industry stationed when the storm hit? Were you guys in Lee County? No, you were in Tampa. So that's, they were following the weather track, and they had to make decisions based on that. But, 72 hours, they weren't even in the cone. 48 hours, they were on the periphery. So you got to make the decisions the best you can. I will say, they delivered the message to people. They had shelters open. Everybody had adequate opportunity to at least get to a shelter within the county. But, a lot of the residents did not want to do that. I think probably for various reasons. Some people just don't want to leave their home, period. They're island people, whatever. But I think part of it was so much attention was paid to Tampa that I think a lot of them probably thought that they wouldn't get the worst of it. So, but they did. And I think it's easy to second guess them, but they were ready for the whole time and made that call when there was justifiable to do so.
Some of their neighboring counties, though, did have mandatory evacuations before Tuesday.
So CNN's Nadia Romero, but some of the neighboring counties had, evacuation orders in. And what CNN doesn't understand is, and what the media doesn't understand is, in the United States of America, when you own your own home, you absolutely have the right to stay in it, even if you face imminent death from a hurricane. It's just a fact. And so DeSantis, of course, is trying to bring that point home to CNN's Nadia Romero to say, look, there are people that are going to stay in their homes and shelter in place no matter what. And so, yes, we had this broad-based warning that we think the hurricane's going to hit in the Tampa area, but there's no way of knowing. And CNN, of course, they're like, oh, but, you should have known. And, of course, DeSantis is like, yeah, but the thing is, you had all of your equipment set up in Tampa because you thought that that's where it was going to hit. And it ended up hitting, of all places, in Lee County, of course. And Tampa is not in Lee County, just so you know. In Lee County, it's a significant distance away from the various places it hit, which was Pine Island, Fort Myers, and Sanibel Island, Captiva. Those areas, Port Charlotte, those areas were nailed, as was, of course, much of Naples. But the areas in Fort Myers in particular, which is Lee County, were hit the hardest. And DeSantis' point is, look, you have the right to stay in your home. Okay? We can't make you. We can suggest to you strongly that you might die and are likely to die from drowning or being pulled out to sea or having the house fall on you, crushed on you, what have you. But we can't make you. We can't make you leave. Moreover, this gotcha of, Governor DeSantis, how can you possibly not know exactly where the storm is going to hit? Because we don't know exactly where the storm is going to hit until just before it hits. Okay. Which is why you have these broad-based evacuation plans. But that wasn't enough for Nadia Romero of CNN because it's about undermining this governor so he will lose his reelection for governor in the state of Florida since he's up for election. Here's the second clip. Here it is. Listen.
Well, right. But her neighboring, if you look at Tuesday morning, they had moved the track down. Models started showing it going to Sarasota, so so they did that. I was in Sarasota that day with them when they were expanding some of their evacuations. Charlotte, I think, did the same thing either Monday night or Tuesday morning. But don't forget Sunday, 11 a.m. advisory, it was going to go to Taylor County in North Florida. And so, at some point you got to look to see kind of where this thing is going. So, yeah, no, I think that it's easy to say in hindsight, we had most of our supply station in the Tampa Bay area. As that track moved, we shifted our response further south as well. Now, we said there would be impacts for sure. And even when it was going to hit North Florida, it's such a big storm, there was going to be impacts in southwest Florida as well. But the difference between impacts and having the eye go there is much different. And for most of Sunday, Monday, and even into Tuesday, it was 150 miles away from them.
Is that one of the things you'll be reviewing once we get out of the aftermath, people get their power back on, looking at those evacuation orders? Because even Lee County, if they would have followed their own evacuation orders from what we reviewed, they should have had that mandatory evacuation order sooner.
Well, but, the issue, though, is also that there were a lot of, they informed people, and most people did not want to do it. That's just the reality. So, you're in a situation, are you going to grab somebody out of their home that doesn't want to? I don't think that's the appropriate use of government. I think that takes it a little too far.
And we heard from the FEMA administrator today as well, who says that anyone, whether you're in Florida or anywhere else, you live near water, that you should have flood insurance. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that what happens with homeowners is they'll say, you're in a floodplain, you want a mortgage, you have to get flood insurance, so they do. But what they will say, if you're not in a floodplain, so people say, hey, I don't need it. The reality is, particularly in Florida, it's a pretty good idea to get it. Fortunately, usually it's pretty affordable. So I think that'll be something that people see, because you're going to have people who had total losses, who would have bought insurance if they were told they were at risk. But now you're in a situation where you're seeing floods like nobody's ever seen before, and that's just something people will, I think, internalize and then want to do something about.
There have been some criticisms about those skyrocketing premiums during your term as governor. What more could you have done, or the Florida legislature, to keep that affordable for Floridians?
Well, the flood insurance is a federal program, so that's not ours. That's a separate program. Most of the claims for this are going to be under the National Flood Insurance Program.
Yeah, so as you heard, ladies and gentlemen, I know that was a long clip, but it was worth listening to. That's CNN trying to do everything it can to nitpick decisions by this governor. Now, to be fair, that is what reporters are supposed to do to everyone, to be fair. Now, CNN, of course, would never do that same thing to a Democrat governor, ever. And we know this, of course. But in this particular case, Nadia Romero of CNN starts out with the evacuation question. Well, our models show at CNN that people should have evacuated no matter what, and much sooner. And we'll be reviewing this, Governor, after this emergency is over, reviewing your response, like you're supposed to actually know where the hurricane is going to hit, to which DeSantis responded, we actually did tell people in Lee County that using the tier zone, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, that you should, if you're in tier 1 and tier 2, you should most definitely evacuate. But once again, we can't make people evacuate. And we told them we actually don't know where the storm specifically is going to hit. So are you going to get a category 4 storm direct hit, or are you going to get a category 4 storm very much indirect hit where it's 30 miles away? Or 15 or 20 miles away. Big difference between the two. And then, of course, since she couldn't play gotcha effectively on that with DeSantis, Nadia Romero of CNN says, well, what about flood insurance? Everybody's complaining, Governor, about how expensive it is to have flood insurance. Yeah, that's because you live in Florida where there's water everywhere. So flooding is very, very likely. Therefore, flood insurance is very high. And to that, DeSantis says, well, you do realize that the flood insurance that is offered to the citizens of Florida is offered actually through the federal government. It's a federal program. And so its premiums are set at the federal level. They're not set by Florida. And of course, the CNN reporter, it wasn't enough. Like, she didn't even know that, of course. How could she? Because CNN hires people to do hit jobs. They don't hire people to actually provide information. Ever. And so then she continued after that, which we didn't play this part of the clip. The CNN reporter Nadia Romero says, well, but Governor, how about the wind insurance? And DeSantis is like, yeah, the wind insurance actually is provided by private insurance companies. And those private insurance companies, many of them left Florida. They left Florida for a variety of reasons, and those are very complicated reasons, and that's worth looking at. That's something that we might be able to do something about. But ladies and gentlemen, let's make something very clear to CNN and the idiots that watch it, and MSNBC and the idiots that watch it. Florida has a lot of water, and people in Florida often get flooded. Florida has hurricanes, and hurricanes are very windy, and wind and water combined causes lots of damage. Which means that if you're an insurance company, the chances are your insurance rates are going to be really high. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that's unfortunate, of course. It's very unfortunate. But let's face it, we have a media that is no longer interested in actually getting to the truth and or providing information. Instead, it's the gotcha questions, as you just heard from Nadia Romero, and also the MSNBC idiot. Can we play that MSNBC thing one more time? This is Joy Reid. Listen to Joy Reid. It's just incredible. We have that clip. Here it is one more time.
As Florida battles one of the most powerful hurricanes ever to hit the United States, Governor Ron DeSantis is, he's running for president. Not officially, not yet. But nothing like a disaster and national cameras to boost one's White House ambition. All he has to do now is open up his arms and receive federal money. Let's just be clear. That is the executive leadership. He's now got to go hand in hand to Joe Biden for aid.
Right.
So MSNBC is laughing at people in Florida who have been ravaged by Hurricane Ian. She's literally laughing at them and saying, isn't it funny? He's got to go to Biden and ask for aid. By the way, Biden's not providing the aid. The taxpayers of the rest of the country are providing the aid, not the president. The president doesn't provide aid. He doesn't just like use his magic wand. Oh, here's the aid. No, the aid is actually paid for by us. And to underscore this, the Babylon Bee has a very funny spoof in it. It's an article titled Hurricane Ravaged Florida Town Raises the Ukraine Flag so Congress will send aid. Because we're sending billions and literally tens of billions of dollars, if not more, maybe it's hundreds of billions at this point, to the Ukraine so that they can have aid to fight the Russians in a war. And MSNBC, of course, is attacking the people of Florida and the governor of Florida by saying, isn't it funny? He's got to ask Biden for aid. And so the Babylon Bee is like, yeah, well, the people in Fort Myers are raising the Ukraine flag because they figure if they do that, they'll be much more likely to get aid. Good job, Babylon Bee. Very good.